All right, so we're starting off with Liz, who is back with a $10 million fine.
Yeah, this actually really surprised me. Robocollar actually got fined. I guess a Jake Pie wants to go out on a note that he wasn't just a horrific corporate shill the whole time, which he totally was. But I think I think it's very interesting that a lot of folks who are about to head out as part of the legislative turnover are now sort of scrambling to make it appear like they actually care about doing their job. So sort of interesting.
Now, where would you get this bad attitude about the government? Yeah, well, it'd be nice if they do something about it, although I never heard these calls, xenophobic and racist stuff. Mine is all like about your car insurance or something.
Yeah, I get the car warranty, the your social security number's been canceled, and then a bunch that are just. But I didn't think that there were any consequences for Robocollar, so it's cool that they're at least making a token effort to enforce it.
So I don't know if it was me, but Deadmau5 just started making a remix already.
Yeah, no, I gotta go. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I have an emergency meeting.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right.
Okay, no problem.
We'll carry on with Try Hack Me, which is I'm hearing a lot of good things about.
Yeah, they're making certificates of completions now.
Mm-hmm.
Something they hadn't done before. I think this is great. I think this can help. Like, for example, we added in our classes, and if a student shows us this, we'll give them credit. I think it's a great way.
They got a sort of planned learning platform with walkthroughs and stuff, right?
They do now. Yeah. They've been doing a great job of building that kind of stuff. But this is for me. It's another. Here's my money. Keep it up, because this is great. This is great for students.
How much does it cost?
It's $10 a month, but if you're a student, I think it's $6.
Oh, well, that's really a good idea. Sure.
Yeah, you just have to prove that you're a student, but that's easy for all of our students. But yeah.
There's nothing better than high quality material that you don't have to set up your own environment and it's up to date and everything.
Yep.
That's great. All right. And we're going to skip Kaitlyn's stuff. She's vanished. We'll move on to Parler. Oh yeah, the Parler Archive.
I thought this was just kind of funny.
Yeah, this is quite the story. In once again, fallout from the insurrection. There is a hacker who goes by the Twitter handle of Donk NB, who spearheaded an effort to archive as much of Parler's content as possible. She started out trying to focus only on media that was uploaded around January 6th, but ended up capturing over 96% of all media ever uploaded to Parler. A lot of videos, a lot of photos. And she did this with the assistance of another group, the name of which I'm forgetting at the moment.
Yeah, the archive.org or something.
Yeah, the archive team or something like that, yes. And so it became a very impressive technical effort. This article is non-technical, so I'm still very interested in finding out how exactly this work was done. But the result is that basically over 96% of all media ever uploaded to Parler has now been archived and is coming to be freely available. It's available on torrents. Totals over 56 terabytes. Yeah. And it's already being used by various open source intelligence investigators to geolocate people who uploaded content and find out various other bits and pieces of information, and of course, including possibly incriminating evidence too. There were rumors earlier that all of this archived content was hacked, but that's not true. It turns out that Donk NB was able to use a jailbroken iPad and Ghidra to somehow reverse engineer the poorly written Parler API. And that in conjunction with the archive team, they were able to spin up some pretty hefty infrastructure. And at one point, we're downloading something like 50 gigabits per second. In other words, in order to pull down all this content.
Yeah, but of course that's a hack. I mean, that's why one thing I wonder is if any of this will be slightest use in court, and I would think not, for a lot of reasons. The simplest one is just chain of custody. They can no longer get it straight from Parler. They're getting it from somebody who claims they copied it from Parler, and they could have altered it because Anonymous did that with Playpen. 6 years ago, Anonymous hacked the pedophile site Playpen and stole the data. Then they modified it, adding some more people to it as a joke, and then published it and then said, why won't the FBI use it? And of course, you can't use it for exactly that reason.
Right.
But you can use it for probable cause. You just can't use it as evidence.
Yeah, chain of custody is definitely an issue with this.
Yeah.
But with a lot of this open source intelligence, it's about doxing and public shaming and identifying anyway.
Well, you can use it for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Vigilante justice, which is basically what they're thinking, I think.
Right. However, it really does appear that this was not a hack. Donk NB insists that all these resources were publicly accessible and poorly secured.
Yes, well, I've learned the hard way that doesn't mean it's not a hack. I mean, this is the problem with the CFAA. Taking anything from a website that they did not want you to take breaks the law, even when it was just sitting right there in plain sight.
Yeah, right.
I don't think Parler's going to press charges, but technically, this sure appears to be a hack to me.
Yeah. Well, there was also another entirely separate attack in which some people hacked into the website and created thousands of admin accounts.
I heard about that one. Did that really happen?
Apparently so. At least that's what people on Twitter say.
And so did they actually get the hidden deleted messages and private messages and stuff?
That was the claim at the time, but I haven't seen any evidence of that yet.
And there's no question that that's illegal. Holy crap. Somebody else's private
illegal
messages. There's no way you can possibly claim that you had any right to get to that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see if the FBI managed to get subpoena Parler or Amazon and got a clean copy of all this data.
Well, that would be nice, but I think there was no chance. As usual, there was no time. Amazon said, we're pulling the plug like tomorrow. Then they pulled the plug. And the FBI to take them a week to get the search warrant or court order or whatever. That's why it's anyway, we'll see what comes of all this.
Yeah.
I think the immediate issue is the one I keep hearing about, which is that tons of law enforcement are still in favor of the coup. I mean, it's not clear that our law enforcement agencies are all on the same side yet.
Yeah, I believe that the who was it? The chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff sent a message to all service members, reminding them that they swore an oath to protect this nation and to the Constitution. Yeah,
and I was real glad to hear Biden say that. He said, "Everyone understand you are loyal to the Constitution, not to me personally." The Justice Department is not my personal lawyer, reversing Trump's policy and in the right direction, I must say.
Right.
It would sure be nice if we returned to a nation of laws and a constitution instead of just a dictatorship led by a mob boss. But we will see. It's not over yet, apparently. And here's one of the many things of total corruption. They announced last week that all the states could ramp up and start giving out more vaccine because they decided not to hold back half the vaccine. And then it turned out that they had already strangely given away all the second reserve they were holding. That's all vanished somehow. It doesn't seem like anybody actually keeps track of how many doses they have or where it went or anything. But now the stuff they announced we would all have extra starting next week. In fact, there is no extra. So this is about like the same way they handle money and everything else. It's just thoroughly corrupt and thoroughly incompetent. So I know I know some friends that finally managed to get their vaccine dose, and they all got it through a secret backroom deal, knowing somebody. We are a very corrupt nation, and there is no actual forward orderly progress to getting vaccine yet. Although in California, for us teachers, supposedly Kaiser Pacific now has it, Kaiser Permanente. and they actually are distributing it to the 1A people, and the 1B people will be notified. So those of us with Kaiser apparently might actually have some kind of orderly way of getting it.
My friend works for she works for a county health department here in California, and she's on the vaccine distribution team, where she's got to call up people in the 1A group and also work in the vaccine clinic. And she got it, but she also has to field calls from the public, which, boy, she gets some interesting ones. And one of the things that they're dealing with now is there's been a big push to apparently from the government to dispense with the tiers because and just make it available to everybody and not prioritize the vaccine distribution, which is totally insane. But the reasoning behind that is that they want to make it look like, oh, we have no supply issues and we're doing a marvelous job of handling this situation and everything else, which is pretty.
Well, I'm not sure that would be insane. You know, in Indonesia, they just announced that they're going to give it to the young people, not the old people, because they figure the young people don't die, but they're the ones that spread it. If you inoculate the young people, they won't spread it to the old people. And they say that might actually be true. So all these scientific plans, and also since half of Americans are going to refuse to take it anyway, I think all organization and planning is total fantasy at this point.
I do think it's really important for healthcare workers to get it, and people that work in nursing homes and stuff, because
it's very important.
We know
but they won't take
that's a major vector.
Of course, but half of them refuse to take it. So that the progress that you would accomplish by doing that is pretty much off the table.
Trader Joe's, I saw a story yesterday that Trader Joe's is the first chain business to offer to pay employees extra if they get it.
That's a start. And a month later, they should announce that you are not allowed to show up for work unless you've had it, with the carrot and the stick. That's why I think the only part of America that does work is the private corporations, and they can control this by requiring everybody to have a proof of vaccination to come in the store or something. Anyway, we'll see what happens, but perhaps you and I can get it in a month or two through Kaiser, I'm hoping. Anyway, and Pirate Bay. This is a very legitimate complaint.
Yeah, this one kind of goes hand in hand with Alan's story that he just brought up, because I thought this one was pretty entertaining too. The Pirate Bay founders were dunking on Parler, and it's like, look, you have all this money and all this resources, and you can't even keep you can't even keep the bus on the road. But you know, we started with nothing and had nothing but antagonism against us, and we managed to keep our thing going. So yeah. I thought that was just pretty entertaining.
From a tactical point of view, he's absolutely right. But the point of Parler is clearly to further the right-wing agenda. The whole right-wing agenda is to whine and complain and be the victim. So they say they censored us, boo-hoo, is more valuable to them than actually being up, because obviously Putin would totally put them up on a Russian server for free anytime. I don't know why they haven't done that yet.
Mm-hmm.
I assume that's probably where they will end up, is under some kind of foreign government controlling it, but probably through a cutout to conceal that. But anyway, apparently Gab is where all the Nazis have gone now.
Yeah.
And they said, they could go to whoever's hosting Gab.
Mm-hmm. And it'll shift around, you know, they'll keep coming up with another one as they get chased off.
Well, most sites like the child pornography and stuff, they don't actually move around. They just move to a bulletproof server, typically in Russia, where they'll never kick you off no matter what you do.
Yeah, I mean, and it is pretty telling that that's the comparison to make, because, you know, at this point, it's pretty bad. You know, after two, they were essentially planning political assassinations on there without any kind of repercussions.
And they still are. I mean, this is why it's come out that most of the Republicans who voted against impeachment on the Republic did so because their family will be killed by their
Yeah.
base otherwise. So they're afraid of that. So it's basically like the Mexican drug cartel. Everybody
Yeah,
has
they're
to fall
getting
in
a lot
line
of
with-
threats.
Yeah. So they're ruling by terror. And that's why I say it's really not over. So,
No, absolutely not. And I think that, I think that for us to just assume that is foolish.
well, apparently they were going to find out the 17th and the 20th are supposed to be the next major actions by the Trump cartel.
Well, and if the previous incident was any indication, they're not proactively preparing for these things.
Well, they're preparing the Washington for those 10,000 or 20,000 National Guard people sleeping on the floor. I don't think they're going to take out the Washington inauguration on the 20th. I think they'll probably do something like have a mass shooting in Ohio or something from one nut, but I don't think they're going to be able to stop Biden from being inaugurated on the 20th in Washington.
No, but they want to go back. They want to go after other. Political figures too.
Well, I'm sure they do. And this is why I think, the United States now meets many European nations like Britain, where you just have a internal terrorist organization that hates you, and they're setting off bombs in subways and just low-level terrorism all the time. That's why people say, if you lived in Britain, you got used to this. I can't go through the tube today because they set off another bomb in there. America used to be like in a fool's paradise where we didn't have like a low-level civil war going on, but now we do, like everybody else.
That's true. They are kind of like the IRA.
Yeah, or the Basque separatists. There's this sizable armed group of people that want to blow things up in our country, and nobody can really stop them right away, except Trump. Trump could stop them, but he doesn't want to. So, yeah, well. So it's not the end of the world, though. It's not the end of America. We're just reaching the same level of chaos and internal dissent that other nations have lived with for decades. But people accuse me of always being too optimistic. There might be some truth to that. Anyway, so Windows 10 will self-destruct again. Yay!
Yes, Windows 10 will self-destruct. This is awesome. I tried it on a VM and it totally works. So there is a little line that you need, and there's a picture of it further down. You stick that in anything, and it will corrupt the index of NTFS.
It's just going into the MFT.
It is. It's going to the MFT, and sometimes it wipes it. Sometimes Windows can recover from it, but it's more of a hit and miss. It's just awesome.
This reminds me of when XP was new. It would turn on this background indexing service, and if you had a file larger than 600 megs, it would just freeze up forever and kill your machine. And there was another one around the same time where if you put things in a folder and the total length of the path was more than like 256 characters, something awful would happen. This just keeps happening. Microsoft can't like index the files on your disk without a disaster.
Yep. So this is the new one, totally unpatched. It's still, you can still run it and still have the effect.
So did they tell Microsoft and give them a chance to fix it?
I think they did.
And they just ignored them?
They just ignored it and said, okay, well, here you go, world. Have fun.
This reminds me of the one I used to kill the Windows server on stage at DEF CON. I told them, and they said, oh, we don't care. I said, you really don't care. Well, okay, then, if you're going to be like that, but I think you should care.
Yeah.
That's Windows for you.
This is awesome.
Aha! Kaitlyn has appeared. Do you want to talk about?
Sorry about that. Yeah, sorry about that. It's Taco Friday over at Taco Bell. So
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, it's important.
very important. Yes.
You want to hit some of yours then?
Sure. Why don't I do some of mine?
Insider attack matrix, because I want to know what this is.
Yeah, no. So this is a great idea because we have this attack matrix for looking at outside threats like APT groups and looking at the chain of compromise that goes on when you have these different groups and what they look like. But of course, the number one threat that any company faces is not these outside threats. It's not Russia. It's your insiders that are just doing whatever. And so they developed threat models based on insider threats. And they have this whole kill chain here where figure one, if I can zoom in, wrong keyboard.
Sure.
I can zoom in. Yeah, there we go. So it starts off with recruitment and turning point,
Mhm.
and then reconnaissance, defense evasion, and they start collecting data and stuff like that. And then there's this aftermath. So they have this entire kill chain of what you're looking for and indicators of compromise if there's an insider threat. I mean, this is something that's been needed for a long time.
Oh yeah.
So definitely good stuff to have.
I definitely needed to add this to my classes. In fact, there's a CTF coming up like next week on this stuff.
Ooh.
Let me just mention it. This one I should have it down here. Yeah, the CrowdStrike Intelligence Adversary Quest coming up on the 18th, which is a few days away, which is this kind of thing. It's tracking down APT, identifying them with this. So I'm very interested in that.
Oh, I will have to put that in my calendar as well.
Yeah, yeah. This is the new hotness. Ever since I started getting into the attack matrix, and it's because of the Pacific Hackers Group. I would go down there and do their CTF, and half of their CTF was, figure out which APT group this was. And I said, well, I never thought about that, but attribution is the new hotness.
Yep.
And it's very popular with my students because it's not as technical, but it's important, and yeah, that's cool. I'm glad you brought it up. And why don't you just do your next one, because we're on the second one anyway.
Okay, so one of the we talk a lot about the problem of living in our bubbles on this podcast before, where we talk about the issue of people go into their little groups and that it becomes an echo chamber, and part of that echo chamber is advertisements, right? I mean, we haven't really talked about that before. So we have this targeted ads. We have targeted ads, and of course these ads are looking at what we're looking at, and so they they reverberate the echo chamber, so to speak, and this can be really detrimental. In particular, Facebook has been showing military gear ads next to insurrection posts, and so we can see how the ads themselves in this echo chamber are actually fueling some dangerous ideology. So it's something just to keep in mind. Yeah.
And I think last week we had the social science study that like 70% of the people that joined like ISIS extremist groups were recruited on YouTube by the algorithm.
Yeah. So these algorithms, these echo chambers, they're bad, and it's not. And we don't just need to look at the communities. We also need to look at the way advertisement plays into that as well.
And this is the huge change of America. Instead of the old Adam Smith invisible hand, where the only thing corporations care about is making more money, they really have to expand their business model to evaluate profit in terms of how much you're destroying society as well.
Right. I mean, this isn't anything new. I mean, this is the fundamental idea of environmentalism, where you sort of have to weigh, your profits against, destroying the environment and the public good and stuff like that. And I think moving forward, we're going to have to start weighing in the ethical and moral consequences of what we're building into what we're producing.
Well, I think we do. And this is what I heard Andrew Yang talking about on a podcast a few days ago. He said he would like, right now, there's this one number called GDP, and all of our government tries to maximize GDP. And the guy that invented GDP said it doesn't really measure what you need. You'd really need to, I'm getting funny noises. You really need to have a better measure that includes other things like pollution and how miserable the poor people are and stuff, and something like quality of life, and maximize that instead. And companies need it too, but all companies look at now is the stock price.
Well, they're starting to, yeah. I mean, part of Twitter, I think the reason why like Trump got banned on Twitter is because a lot of these companies are looking at stability. Like, sure, Twitter could make a lot more money if they, have people like, Trump, and, they really fuel these people to go onto Twitter and start these, revolutionary groups, and Twitter would be the main HQ. The problem is that it destabilizes society. And of course, society is the reason they're rich in the first place, right? Like, money has no value outside of society. So,
yeah. And everyone is dependent on the government infrastructure. Like, they have to have streets and safe houses and electricity and stuff. So, but I mean, we need a metric. This is the same thing in security. We need security metrics, and we need like health metrics for society, which are optimized by companies instead of just everything being money. So
exactly.
We're in the process of developing. We need a new model for our culture. Anyway, and so here's Alan, Facebook with their violent extremists.
Yeah, so this article is published by Ars Technica. It's a summary of a number of news stories, a number of different publications. And just to highlight some of the big points in this, first of all, there was an article published in the New York Times profiling 3 different Facebook and Instagram, let's call them influencers, only one of whom the New York Times was able to interview. So it's a very, very small sample size. Nevertheless, it's an interesting analysis, and it's the kind of analysis that I think we'll be seeing a lot more of in the coming weeks. Because what it found was that these people, these 3 so-called influencers, up until very recently, were benign nobodies on social media platforms. They would post pictures of themselves or kind of empty-headed self-improvement cliches. But otherwise, you know, they weren't influential. Nobody paid them any attention, and they were certainly inoffensive. However, much more recently, all 3 of them have kind of gotten onto the conspiracy bandwagon. 2 of the people profiled are Australians, I believe. And yet even these Australians had a lot to say about QAnon and democracy. And what this article found was that these people were suddenly getting a lot more attention based on their posts. In particular, the one American who was successfully interviewed, he said that he found it very gratifying that posts that in the past would have gotten only maybe half a dozen likes, suddenly he was seeing over 100 likes and interactions based on his post criticizing Biden and with messages similar to "Stop the Steal." Also in the Ars Technica article, this survey of a Wall Street Journal article in which apparently Facebook is very much aware of the extremist content on its platform, and they were aware of this well in advance of the insurrection on the 6th. And there is apparently some discontent internally in Facebook that the company is not doing nearly enough, that they have the power and they have the capability to identify more content that violates their policies and is also insurrectionist, but they're for whatever reason not acting on that. But it's not that Facebook is entirely oblivious to these threats, because apparently Facebook has instructed all employees to stop wearing Facebook branded gear because they are concerned that Facebook employees will be targets out there in the wider world.
Mm. Well, they're right about that, actually.
They are. They absolutely are. Although that's just nuts. Like, you know, that employees of a tech company would be targets. But I suppose this is the logical conclusion in which large corporations take on the functions of governments in some ways, and so their employees are by extension considered agents.
Well, also, this is, I think, Zuckerberg. I mean, Zuckerberg tied himself very closely to Trump. He wants to be president. He was absolutely supporting Trump, meeting with him publicly and on the bandwagon. Now he's trying to turn away from Trump, and I think he's likely to end up making everybody hate him. That seems to be what everybody seems to be settling on, is both sides hate Facebook and blame them for everything.
Yes, and I don't think Zuckerberg possesses the political instincts to navigate this properly, and I don't think Sheryl Sandberg is really much better either.
No.
I agree.
And it reminds me somewhat of the YouTube shooting from a few years ago, where you know, a lot of the time the people that are doing these things aren't exactly sane and logical. So they see anyone who's working for these big tech companies as being sort of an agent of repression or whatever their beef is.
Yeah. And, you know, I think we're living through, you know, a change in our culture, and there's an awful lot of chaos involved. Anyway. All right. And so here, this is something I was waiting for. I expected this. So one of the rioters, the QAnon Shaman, the guy with the horns, is claiming that what he did is legal because Trump told him to do it. I was waiting for this defense. I mean, the commander-in-chief of the U.S. military told you to do it, so it's not a crime. If I was his lawyer, I would say this sounds pretty good to me. He was just accepting the president's invitation, and he said he didn't have a gun, he didn't break a window. When he got there, the cops just opened the door and let him in. He got in there and posed for selfies wearing his gear, and this sounds like a pretty good defense to me.
It really does. I mean, that one's, I'm sure they'll argue against it, but I mean, he's not wrong.
I know, especially
Come on, and he's telling us all.
when the cops let you in. What the hell? I mean, anyway.
And nobody told him to leave.
I know. I mean, there are some people that said that. They said, well, I thought this was just open for business and it was a tour. They're just letting people in, right? Anyway, and so every state capital has been told to expect more attacks, and Newsom's going to stick 1,000 National Guard in Sacramento, so maybe California will be relatively safe. We'll see what comes of it all. Anyway, and that last article from Alan just said that there's the 16th is also a date. So one thing I can tell is since they don't have Twitter and Facebook to organize anymore, the Trump mob will have trouble deciding what date they're supposed to perform these attacks. I've heard the 16th, the 17th, and the 20th. So I think it'll just be a scattered mess instead of a big event, because he advertised that January 6th event months in advance everywhere, and the individual emails to that email list that no longer exists. So I don't think they'll be able to organize as large a mob, but we will see. Anyway, so then we got the security response at the Capitol. Boy, I sure like clarity on this.
Yeah, well, it's a long read, but they really kind of go into detail here and break it down on a timeline as to what happened. And I mean, the TLDR here, the short and sweet gist of it is that they knew this was going to happen. I mean, when it happened, I was just, my surprise there was, where are the tanks and the MRAPs and the tear gas and
the helicopters dropping tear gas bombs on them like the Vietnam protests. I mean,
well, and I mean, just what they rolled out this summer for the BLM protests was massive overkill. I mean, they had secret military spy planes and all this crap, and then they know this is going to happen. They put it out there as we've explored in some of our previous stories today. This was all over the internet. The FBI knew about this in advance and tried to collaborate with other agencies on it. And nobody did anything. They didn't even build a dossier on this and make a plan, and there's no explanation for that. The police knew about it, the intelligence agencies knew about it, and that's what's mind blowing to me. I mean, I get that, yes, it's politically, nobody wants to do anything that's gonna outrage the king, and it's politically unsavory or whatever. But these issues are when it needs to go out the window. And one of our California legislators, Lofgren, she's the head of one of those committees, and she had questioned the Capitol Police about this and looked to the security teams to say, look, we know that there's been a lot of talk of stuff happening. What's the plan? How are we gonna deal with this? And they said, oh, don't worry, we've got everything under control, and we've totally got everything's secure. Don't worry about it. Clearly, that was not the case.
Yep. The thing I think I saw before, I never saw it this clearly. So Trump was behind glass when he gave his speech. So he knew that there were violent nuts out there.
Yeah, well, I think they are doing that now as a COVID protection, but I mean, come on.
As if Trump
Right.
cares about that. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, come on, that's a little bit of a disingenuous argument. And
This
I mean, it's also just like when at one point I was really busy all day last Wednesday when all this went down, and at one point I was on a lunch break and I was making some coffee and I tuned in and I see like 5 bike cops fighting off this armed horde of people. And I'm just like, really?
Yeah.
5 bicycle cops? Like, who could have possibly known that there might be some issues today where, you know, maybe we'd want to put more police in place? I mean, what a shocker.
Yeah. Yeah. And the amazing thing to me, which is just like I've seen in banana republics and dictatorships all over the world, is that the leader is a hypocrite and a coward. He hides behind glass. He says, I'll be there with you. Then he goes downstairs to watch it on TV, and his supporters don't see anything wrong with this. It's amazing. And the same thing happens with other cults. The leader is just corrupt as hell, blatantly, obviously lying to you right in front of your face, but the followers can't see it.
And I mean, it's just mind-boggling to me. It's like not expecting hordes of drunk college students to show up on the beach for spring break.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what's going to happen, so you put preparations in place to deal with it. And that makes me wonder, you know, are they really going to prepare for this next round, or are they just making a show of doing it?
Oh, I think they're preparing Washington now. I think the Biden team got involved.
More than that,
And,
I think that
oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say more than that. It seems like the Joint Chiefs have gotten involved.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
I mean, I think they
and
figured out that if Biden got killed, that would make this even worse.
a bunch of legislators are carrying guns now, and now there's an internal conflict because they don't want to go through the metal detectors at the Capitol. And really, I can't say that I blame them after that, because they got pretty lucky.
Yeah, if I was a Democrat, I'd be tempted to carry a gun, but of course the ones carrying guns are the mega QAnon Republicans that want to carry guns. So the reason you need a gun is to protect you from the other members of Congress. So probably actually metal detectors are the best answer.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how this unfolds.
Anyway, Irvin, I'll come back to you. I'm going to skip ahead to Kaitlyn in case she has to leave early. So let's see, Nintendo, yes.
So they came out with this little Game & Watch emulator. So it plays Super Mario Brothers and looks like the old 1980s Game & Watches. And given that it's Nintendo, they have no idea how to do encryption properly. And so what they did is they used like AES ECB for all the encryption.
Oh, ECB. Oh, good.
Yes. So the way you hack this, it's pretty simple. So they have it runs an ARM processor, and there's some debug ports, things you can put probes on, and to get access to the processor and dump the RAM. So what you can do is you can then dump the RAM, edit the ROM, and then see how that affects the output. And so it's essentially no better than like XOR encryption. And so you can put on your own ROMs and edit everything, and it's a lot of fun. But of course, Nintendo's like, you're hacking our stuff, and they're using copyright claims to take down videos of people, playing around with their Nintendo Game & Watch hardware. Yep. And I personally think that's a misuse of copyright claims.
Well, it's the correct use of the law, technically, but
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, technically, yeah. If you have a Nintendo product in your video, yes, technically, Nintendo can say this is a copyright issue. But
if you take apart your Nintendo hardware and get the hidden secrets in it, that's the DMCA you're violating. I know this because I used to analyze college websites until they said you're violating the CFAA. So then they did Android apps, and then they said, now you're violating the DMCA. And I'm like, you guys are just no fun. But anyway.
Yeah. So Nintendo's being no fun. But yeah.
And by the way, even if they're using ECB, I still don't get how you get the key.
You don't get the key. What you do is you edit. So in the ROM, there's an encrypted version of the Nintendo game, right?
Okay.
And that gets loaded unencrypted into RAM.
Oh, then you just
So-
copy it from RAM. Okay.
So, well, what you do is then if you want to put your own stuff on there, what you do is you start randomly editing the ROM and see how that messes up the RAM. And from that, you can then figure out what you need to put in to, to make it work. And it's essentially no stronger than XOR encryption.
Okay.
Trial and error until you get it right.
Sounds like a fun project.
It is a fun project. It's really not that hard, but of course, Nintendo's being no fun.
That's right. That's cool.
It's
Anyway.
really very unfortunate because after seeing some of these videos myself, I was starting to think, well, maybe I want to get one of these
I know.
and hack around.
Well,
But now that it's happened, I'm definitely not going to buy a Game & Watch because I'm not interested in just playing a Game & Watch. I want to hack on it.
I
Yeah.
know.
The thing is those ARM debuggers, they're expensive.
Oh,
They're like over $100 or 120, but
oh.
I mean, you get one of those, you can start hacking away.
You can't just use Ghidra or something?
No, you need to actually interface. There's like 4 pins that you can access on the like debug pins
This is
that
like
you
a
can
JTAG.
access. What?
It's like a JTAG then.
It's like JTAG, but very specific to ARM and for debugging.
Oh, okay. That sounds
Like
like the
software.
kind of stuff we should have in a hardware hacking class.
We should definitely, but yeah, it's going to cost several $100s to get the debugger hardware.
Yeah. And then, of course, PCTF.
This is finally coming back.
This was great.
This is great.
Hey,
Yes, it's finally coming back. It normally happens in the fall, but they did a big system refresh and it took longer than expected, but it's finally coming back this spring. So I want to get the word out to all our students and watchers that, hey, this is just like National Cyber League and KringleCon and other games. This is one of those games that you should play.
And once again,
Awesome.
you got a gym, so you don't need to set up any infrastructure, which is awesome.
Yeah.
this is awesome. I think it's fun and my students really enjoy it too.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it's great because even though it's for middle and high schoolers, it's really good for a lot of our college students who are sort of feeling intimidated and don't know where to jump in. And it's just a really good intro.
Yes, it
Yeah.
really is.
Yeah, and I found, the Portswager classes for my web class, there are more and more of these great online high quality hacking training programs, and I think it's wonderful.
Mhm.
Much better than the ones I've made up over the years with sort of ad hoc things and a lot of setup and everything.
Yeah.
It's great. And so, Alan, you got this MIT report. That's right. And I actually registered. Hopefully they'll let me open it. Aha, good.
Yes, so this is admittedly a rather dry sounding paper published from MIT Review, I think, Technology Review, or maybe Sloan Business School. It's called the MIT Research Report, the 2021 Business Plan, Recapture Growth by Making Big Moves. And yet this has a lot of consequence for IT and IT spending. And there are some interesting findings in here that may indicate where larger businesses are headed and what consequences this has for their IT spend. If you go down to page 4, figure 1, there's a table here of what companies plan to do in 2021. And the top item here is increase tech investments. They've broken down respondents by revenue under 1 billion, revenue over 1 billion, and geographic area, and averaged out 60% of all respondents say that they're going to increase their tech investments in 2021. So that's a good sign for IT generally. There are some other interesting responses in here too, such as move IT functions to cloud. 46% are going to continue or accelerate their moving their IT functions to cloud. And almost at the very bottom is divest real estate, with only 13% saying that they would do that. There's been a lot of talk, or at least early in the stages of the pandemic, that all work would be remote. And if this response is any indicator, that's not going to be happening very much in the future. It sounds like most businesses are planning to bring everyone back into the office at least part-time.
Well, it makes sense to me. I mean, there's a huge pent up demand. Everybody's projects have been on hold for about a year and a half now. and they're going to want to race ahead, and you don't know what offices you're going to need or anything. And besides, real estate prices are down. So clearly you hold on to that because you might need that for whatever becomes possible when this virus is over. So I think the best thing people can do, and what the most of them are doing, is getting training while you're laid off. And
Right.
there will be everyone. I've heard many predictions. There's going to be like a roaring 20s kind of rage after this pandemic is over, as everybody goes out to do all the things they haven't been able to do for a year and a half.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see. Maybe we enter into a new period of decadence.
Well, yeah, and also of like explosive technological growth and travel and business opportunities and everything.
Yes, and also unequal disparity.
Well,
A lot of
sure, all the
people
good things that come along with it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So other notable responses in this, in figure 3 on page 6, what's hindering big business moves? A lot of respondents seem to think that they already have a lot of what they need in place in order to execute on their plans.
Yeah.
For example, don't have the right skill sets or processes in place. Very few respondents, I think it's under 20% of respondents, think that they do not have the right skill sets or processes in order to execute on their plans in 2021. So it sounds like a lot of these businesses feel like they are in a position to execute on what they want to do. They don't have a lot of obstacles at this point.
No, it makes sense. They just
And
need
then, of course,
the virus to get out of the way.
And then there are a few other things like cloud-based technology and finance, where they plan to spend, predictive analytics. That seems to be the most popular one. They're going to be automating security and compliance. 42% of respondents say that they're going to be automating security and compliance somehow. And so it'd be very interesting to see what that means for the job picture and what types of products and services are going to be thriving based on that.
Yeah.
Plus, I think you can only do that up to a point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
I don't believe that. I think they're fooling themselves. This is what managers think. Oh, they'll buy this AI thing and we won't need to hire real security people anymore. Sure.
Yeah, yes, and then we'll buy another product to fix the problems that we incurred by implementing the first product, and then another 2 products to deal with the problems that we created by implementing the second product.
We can
and so on.
Job security for our students. You'll always need more and more security staff to fix the disaster caused by your previous security staff. So, all right. Anyway, that's a good one. And I think we're down to the last one, which is this Russian guy, Navalny, is the guy that wants to run against Putin. So Putin sent agents to poison him. And not only did they fail to poison him well enough and then failed to trap him in Russia so he could, until he died, they let him get away to Germany where he got cured from the poison. And then he called the agent that poisoned him and pretended to be a Russian KGB guy asking what went wrong. And he totally admitted on recording that he poisoned him and how he did it. They put granules of poison in his underwear. So now he's going to go back to Russia to run against Putin. And they've warned they're going to arrest him as soon as he comes in. And his wife back in Russia, or someone in his staff, they grabbed her phone and gave it back to her. And all you have to do is open it. And here's the bug that they stuck in her phone. So one thing I've noticed here is the terrifying Russian KGB just seem to be the gang that can't shoot straight. They can't even poison somebody. They can't even put a bug in your phone without it looking like it was a hack job from like a 1-hour project at DEF CON. I mean, this is our feared, terrifying enemy that's going to blow up the world with nuclear weapons. They don't seem to be able to do anything right these days. So anyway.
Well, this is good. This is good for our students who suffer from imposter syndrome and feel like they're never going to be at the right level. It's like, look, even the KGB could use some improved skills. They're not a hard act to follow.
Like, what the hell is this? This is a board to go into a USB slot or something with these edge connectors that are just.
It has a SIM card.
They just took a SIM card and like. wired it up with a blob of solder and stuck it next to the battery and said, "Oh, nobody will ever find this."
I
You can
mean,
buy it
I guess I'm impressed that they managed to fit another component into the iPhone because the tolerances are so tight. But geez, what a ham-handed job.
I know. That's what I
Apparently
thought.
what they did is they bought this module off of AliExpress for about $40. And then they actually took out the battery and then swapped out a smaller battery
Oh,
so that it freed up space to fit that little module into that gap that you can see there.
so it's totally something.
But
any of
there's
us
also
could
been
have
a lot
done.
of speculation that this is not legit, that it was staged, or that Russian intelligence wanted this to be found because it is such a hack job.
Yeah, well, that's
I don't know. I don't know if I believe that.
yeah. Well, I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
We, from our vantage, we don't have any way of knowing, but
I don't have any
hey,
way
if
to-
you want to do this yourself, you can for only $40.
I don't have any
Plus
way
the
to know
battery.
when my own government's lying to me anymore. So anyway, any more comments?
No.
All right, I'll stop this recording. And